Welcome all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Jim Cucaruto of the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. John and Jim will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our hosts of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Jim.
Welcome to another episode of Connecting with Conservation. I'm John Gassett, your co-host, also with Wildlife Management Institute. I'm here with my co-host, Jim Cucaruto. Jim, how you doing?
Doing great, John, and excited again. Man, we keep having great new guests and ones that I learn a lot from. And today we've got Tommy from NASP, and I don't know a ton about it. So let's first hear a little bit about Tommy, and then we'll get into NASP.
Well, hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm Tommy Floyd. I live in Somerset, Kentucky. I've been with the National Archery in the Schools program. This is my 10th year. I was a 30-plus year public school educator, administrator, superintendent guy, and had been involved with NASP since 2003 when I was a high school principal and began the program. I've been with them a long time, 10 as an employee, and I'm starting my 4th year as the president of this organization.
Well, Tommy, you and I go way back. And you're sort of dating me. You're making me feel old because I remember when the program stood up, when Roy Grimes and Tom Bennett stood it up and started rolling it out to the schools. And it doesn't seem like it's been that long ago, but if you've been there 10 years already, wow.
Yeah. we're starting year 23.
That is awesome.
23 since it started in Kentucky. And I'm happy to tell you that I think it's kind of neat how the numbers line up, but we have had 23.5 million students receive archery lessons. We have 1.3 million students actively engaged a year in over 9,500 schools. We're in 49 United States, 10 Canadian provinces, British Virgin Islands, and New Zealand. We're growing right now at the rate of about 1,300 new schools every year. We are the largest youth archery program in the world.
Awesome. Now, this is, if I recall the way this was constructed, it's a component of the PE class, I guess. And we had to keep the focus fairly narrow when it was stood up to make sure that it complied with all the requirements for the educational requirements. But I always thought it was interesting that there's more than just PE in shooting archery. I mean, you have physics, you have math, you have all kinds of different subjects you can touch on when you're teaching archery lessons. So it's sort of a universal platform for educating kids, it seems like.
Absolutely. One of the things that makes us different from every other archery organization out there that works with kids, all those folks do it after school only. They wait till school gets out and they do what they do. Ours is an in-school. In order to become a NASP school, you select somebody to teach it. Oftentimes, as Dr. Gassett said, it's a PE teacher, but it could also be an ag teacher, math teacher, activity teacher of some other kind. And that becomes a part of the school's curriculum. The one thing we offer on our website is elementary, middle, and high school level curriculum guides. These are simply how to teach the program. And as a former educator, it was always wonderful to me, and I still hear accounts now how teachers will do interdisciplinary units. The PE teacher will get with the math teacher. They'll get with the social studies teacher. They'll talk about the history of archery, how archery developed from the very beginnings. They'll talk about the physics, the math, the spines of the arrow, the draw weight of the limbs, all the things that work to make an arrow go down range to hit the target. It's been very, very successful. Lots of people have introduced NASP to lots of students in lots of ways. We love to say that the bow doesn't care what you look like or where you live.
I'm blown away by the size of it. I knew about it forever, but archery wasn't my world, and so over 1 million kids a year.
1.3, yes, sir.
1.3. And then, is it an hour class? Is it a week-long
That's a good
class?
question. That's a great question. So So a school that says they're going to become a NASP school, they agree to teach international style target archery, a bullseye target for 10 hours minimum a year. And if a teacher somewhere teaches NASP, they introduce the 11 steps to shooting. They talk about all the safety aspects. You know, John, I must say that after 23 years, we have an unblemished safety record. And that is incredible for the principal or anyone in a community that's listening to our conversation today that wants to start the program. It's a safe sport. It's a safe sport that involves just about everybody. We have students in NASP who don't have all their limbs. We have visually impaired students, deaf students, students with all kinds of physical disabilities. We find a way for them to participate. That, to me, as an educator all my life, besides an outdoorsman and a bow hunter, has been something I've been very, very proud of, that it engages a lot of different kinds of issues that kids have that don't stay issues. They find a way to shoot the bow.
Well, that's two, I think, obvious and notable differences between NASP or archery in a classroom and every other organized sport in high school or elementary school, and that's that I don't know of a sport that has an unblemished record.
No, I don't think any of my ball sports did, based on my insurance bills.
I'm not sure table tennis or badminton has an unblemished safety record.
I think they're right up there with us. They may even be a little ahead, but the sheer numbers of students in America that are shooting archery in NASP, plus all these other organizations that are shooting archery, I think it's a great time to say NASP isn't in competition with anybody. We're for everybody that's trying to engage kids in the shooting sports, that's trying to support what educators are doing, and that somehow help students find the pathway to an outdoor lifestyle. I'm 62 years old. I wasn't supposed to date much, but I'm old, and hunting has been a part of what I am since I was 9. So I know what the outdoors has done for me. You and I have had some opportunities to go afield before, John, chasing those old turkey birds. And, I just think for families that are looking for something outside of one of these things, okay, a telephone, that's where our kids spend way too much time now. So this is a gateway to the next step. We're real excited about our 3D archery that's growing and growing and growing, and a lot of schools that were only doing bullseye archery are now doing 3D, and we're real proud of the growth there. So you're going to see even more growth in the 3D and bullseye world ahead.
All right, so it's 3D is kind of the travel ball level of the NASP basic.
Yes,
I guess
sir.
then is like you master the stuff in the gymnasium or wherever you shoot at school, and then the next step is start doing unknown distances at 3D targets. So
ready for the big time. And according to a document that you'll be able to direct your viewers to, our 2024 NASP student survey, there's some great data in here on what kids say after going through NASP that they want to learn how to do outdoors.
So on top of, the 10 hours or more, sounds like probably a lot of schools do a lot more than 10 hours. You guys, do you also have competitive events?
Correct. Yes. Great question. Thank you, Jim. Many of the schools that teach the 10 hours, let me just tell you how it almost always goes. You have students who come in the gym. They get introduced to the curriculum. They learn to shoot. Within a few ends of arrows, they discover that those arrows are going sort of where they want them. 2 or 3 more days later, those arrows are going most of the time where they want them. Let me tell you what happens at lunch and on the bus. They start talking about this new thing they found that they love doing called archery. And again, I would direct you to what they say about our program in our survey. A lot of schools start competitive teams after school, and this is really something special. Every school in every place in America has a group of students that don't participate in anything. They get on a bus, they go to school, they don't cause a problem, they go to lunch, they go back to class, they get on a bus, they go home. They don't do anything. This archery thing comes along, and a bunch of kids that were never engaged before get excited about something they can do. Archery. Hey, I can shoot Archery. Let me tell you about it. They tell dad, they tell mom, they tell grandma and grandpa. And the next thing you know, they read that there's going to be tryouts after school. They make the team. Oh my goodness. Now they're wearing a school colored shirt. They're getting on a bus on Saturdays. They're going to an archery event. Mamas and papas and moms and dads and guardians, people that have never gone to a sporting event because they weren't sports people. They're going to some other gym somewhere and they're starting to shoot. Now that goes forward, and depending on where they are, they end up qualifying for a regional or even a state tournament. Kentucky NASP has the largest state tournament in the nation. A couple of months later, in May, the second week of May, which you're both invited, we have the largest archery tournament in the world, period. We have just under 15,000 students who will shoot over several days, and we will end up with 19,000 sets of scores. Now, of the 15,000 kids that come and go out of that Kentucky Exposition Center, 3 to 4 people come in with each kid. So somewhere between 45 and 50,000 people will come and go to the Eastern National Tournament. It all starts in the gym with that 10 hours minimum. And if they get excited about it, moms and dads become boosters. Moms and dads become cheerleaders for the archery team. And before you know it, they're finding that they shoot together at home. As a matter of fact, about 22% of our kids say because they shot NASP, somebody else at home started shooting a bow. We like that. We call that osmosis, I think, in some circles. But we like it when something good happens to the child and then that child brings it home. And in a world that we could all benefit from more family time spent doing something other than sitting in front of a television or a phone, getting outside and shooting a bow is a big deal. So I'm starting to ramble a little bit on you, but it's so easy. Archery is good for people. NASP is good for kids. If they go from NASP to Scholastic 3D or some other type of archery outdoors, NFAA, USA Archery, good for them. But here's what a lot of them are going to find. They're going to find they've got an interest in bow hunting. They've got an interest in that because they did NASP, they're now interested in doing other sports. And again, if you look at our survey, at all the things that our kids said that they wanted to learn how to do, small game, shooting with a rifle, hunting with a rifle, hunting big game, bow hunting. I remember teaching both of my son and daughter to bow hunt in the beginning. My daughter killed a turkey with a bow before I did, John. She might have reminded me.
Well, she's a better hunter than you are.
Yeah, well, she's a lot better at everything than I am. Her name's Morgan. She was the national champion for NASP and Bullseye in 2007. We love what we do, and we do what we love. We love to partner with conservation organizations that want to help NASP. If anybody that's listening to this wants to know more about what NASP is doing, I could not explain it better than our student survey does on our website, just to look through. And if you want to know how to bring it to your community, we've got a neat graphic on how to do just that. But we know that NASP is working, and it doesn't really care what you look like or where you live.
Well, as outdoor stewards of conservation, one of the things that we do is promote the positive contributions of HATS, hunters, anglers, trappers, shooters, and there's great stories out there like this that we've got to get out to the masses. And so many things going on here. I'd try to focus, but one of the things that you said is that it's not just physical education. There's physics and this, that, the other thing. But I think communication is a big part of that. Kids today, right? They always have their phone. They're probably taking pictures and videos of each other and sharing those, so the word is getting out about archery in a great way that we can't reach their peers. The 3 old white guys on this, we cannot reach the high schoolers, right? So, but they can. Are you seeing that happen?
I am. I love to tell directors, we can get you into homes that you can't get into. And I want to go back to something else that you just said and I said earlier. The disengaged kid. The kid that when one of the 3 of us were to walk up to him and talk to him, they're looking at our feet. All you see is the top of their head because they don't have much to say. The thing that got me into NASP was archery itself. I'd been an archer since I was 9. The thing that kept me involved in NASP and made me want to get more and more involved was what it did to the kids that I saw in it. They became outspoken advocates for this thing called archery. It changed who they were. If you look on our website, we've got a section called Success, Archer to Archer, and you've got all these kids who've grown up and done great things. I talked to Lisa Fry this morning. Lisa Johnson. She is the NASP coordinator for Kentucky. She did a presentation last week to a group of hunter education instructors. She said 8 years ago or so, she put the plea out there, could you please send me some pictures where NASP kids have gone hunting? She said over the course of the next several days, she received some. She said this past year, she put that same plea out, and within so many hours, she had almost 100 pictures. Now I ask you, they say plain talk's easily understood, and some things you don't really have to sell. They sell themselves. You take a young person who doesn't have a lot of self-confidence and they get some shooting a bow and arrow at school. That translates into a next step. Before you know it, that student, boy or girl, because we're a 50-50 male to female participation rate, which is another great fact to bring up. That student begins looking for adventures outside of their yard, their home, their apartment, wherever they live. They look for opportunities to take a bow afield. That is exactly what has to continue and increase in order for the outdoors to continue. Hunters and fishermen that you referred to earlier are the ones that are going to continue to preserve national wild places for everybody and the wildlife that we all see and enjoy. This next generation of outdoors person is going to be one that I hope gets some of that inkling of interest in a program like ours and several others.
Tommy, just 2 points to the past few minutes of conversation. One is, I recall when the program was standing up, sort of the mantra, the tagline was, not every kid can dunk a basketball, but every kid can shoot a bow. And we've seen that. We got 20 years of data that shows that. I've been to those national tournaments, and it's not always the most athletic kid that wins. It's the one who has discipline, the one that practices, the one that wants it. It doesn't matter if they're in a wheelchair. And that's just impressive. But the other thing is, so it does give them that opportunity, especially like you said, those ones that are sort of disconnected. But the other thing is, to Jim's point about, the electronic world we live in, the disciplined kids realize real quickly that the worst thing that can happen when you're on a line at full draw about to release is that phone to buzz in your pocket. So it sort of forces them to put those down. Now, they may pick it up afterwards and take a picture of their score, but they take that first step of setting the phone aside so it doesn't distract them from what they're focused on. And we'd like that in society right now. They'll walk into you walking down the street, they'll run into you because they're too busy looking at their phones.
They're looking down. I love it when they drive past me and they're looking down.
But just the fact that it separates, gets that one degree of separation from everything's tied to a phone or an iPad, and any kid can do it is awesome.
I think one of the interesting things are the attributes that our kids said that NASP gave them. It helped them with their focus. It helped them deal with both success and disappointment. 68% of our kids say that it helped them engage with their school. And almost a quarter of them, almost 25%, said that it was an academic motivator. Now you think about it. The three of us all had someone help us to do something after high school to get ready for life. All the things that Dr. Gassett just said about what kids are deficient in sometimes, our kids are telling us that archery helps them. They're more apt to encourage another to try archery. They're more apt to try another skill. And you take a child that doesn't have a lot of self-confidence, they're hardly apt to try a new skill.
I would guess that, and I don't know if y'all measured this or not, that kids that adapt to the program and they really take it to heart, probably overall, grades and test scores go up, because like you said, it requires discipline, and that bleeds over into other subject matters. So
we have a recognition program called Academic Archer. We have on the upside of 35,000 kids a year recognized for academic proficiency at the local criteria. We get pictures in the spring. I want you to think about this. We get pictures in the spring where the archery team recognizes their academic archer kids, and they're dressed up in what they would wear to church, and they're holding their little academic archer certificate. Now, some of those kids have never been recognized before for anything. They got on the archery team. They got their grades up. They made the honor roll, but that made them an academic archer. Now, one thing I will say is we are way past $4.65 million in scholarships that we've doled out to kids to use in post-secondary education. This coming season, we will give out 120 $500 college scholarships. All kids have to do to be eligible is be registered and show up to one of our events, and we'll give them awards that you are the next recipient. And that's a random thing. So if you give a fourth grade kid a $500 scholarship, you know what you just did? You planted the seed with a fourth grader that he or she has got to think about what they're going to do after high school. Let me tell you a little secret. In the world where artificial intelligence is going to replace what a lot of people do for a living, you're going to need some skills after high school just to make it. So that's another thing. Poor old unknown future archery steps in and does something productive for it.
Well, you mentioned education a bunch of times, and that's exactly what Connecting with Conservation is. We're educating people on how conservation is funded, and those 1.3 million kids that, first of all, if they go on to buy their own bows, their arrows, their hunting license, other products, that's all goes directly back to conservation, the portion of the proceeds from bows, arrows, and rods, reels, and guns and ammo, and plus all the licenses they buy. So they're getting an education on how conservation is funded, which is sorely needed because we know that the vast majority of Americans don't have any clue why there's, birds, bees, butterflies, and squirrels and deer and turkey out there,
Right. I think last year when you saw the HR 5110 issue pop up where Congress had to deal with all that, you saw the groundswell of people who plainly communicated with their elected representatives on how important the outdoors and outdoor funding is. I'm happy to say that NASP was involved in the middle of that. I had the opportunity to become educated myself on how to work with several staffers for several representatives and senators on what NASP was doing for kids. But you're exactly right. For the people that just love the outdoors and they love what it's done for their lives, if you think about it, you've got a school nearby, you've got some students in that school, they may not ever have the chance to make the dots connected between what archery and what archery can lead to in an outdoor pursuit, to making the connection to generation of federal excise tax dollars, Pittman-Robertson dollars, all the things that are going to continue to make sure that there are hummingbirds and certain kinds of non-game species, besides all the game species, habitat development and preservation. I just went to the Smokies not long ago, and you look out in the distance and you don't see a single roof. That's because someone before us knew to set that aside so that would still be here in the year that we live. I think all kids can get an opportunity to understand that concept. And it's because of organizations like yours that young people and adults can become better educated on how to preserve it so that somebody always has it to enjoy.
So just for our listeners, the bill you spoke of, and I don't remember the number, but it was 5110, which I know you got it to heart, but basically what it did, if I recall correctly, is it would restrict federal funding for schools that allowed any kind of participatory sports with what they consider dangerous weapons. And archery was caught up into that, as was scholastic sporting clays, I'm sure, and a bunch of others. But here, now just envision this. Here's the sport. Here's a sport that anybody can do, anybody can excel at. It's the largest in-class sport in the country, if not in the world. And here's a bill filed to take it all away, and that makes absolutely no sense. Someone just wasn't educated.
I think that leads to this point. I think that regardless of whether you're with the Wildlife Management Institute or you're with whoever, Now is the time for all of us to stop worrying about our differences and think about what it takes to collaborate with every other conservation organization, every shooting sport organization. My good friend John Nelson with USA Clay Target, he's a joy for me to see, because even though we both do things very differently, we're both trying to increase the kids' exposure to the shooting sports, opportunities for conservation education. We all have to work together, because we can't ever forget that the freedom and the availability of wildlife and wild places is only going to last as long as it's a priority to us. And if we spend our time looking at anything other than ways that we can collaborate together to educate more young people, more adults, more urban people who don't have access to wild places, and they can live a long time and not realize, oh my, I missed that. If you've ever been with someone who goes hunting for the first time that's never been there, it's fun. It's enjoyable. It's meaningful. You love to see them later and have them recount every little nuanced detail. And for those of us that have done it forever, we don't even think about those things. That's part of being a human being, a free human being.
Yeah, someone should start a program where you invite somebody to come with you when you go hunting, fishing, trapping, or shooting. I don't know. It's just the idea. Maybe something I'll kick around. But talking about the program, so I believe NASP pretty much does everything for you. If you're a student or a parent or an educator that wants to get started, you provide. I know you have a pamphlet, but why don't you tell folks? Somebody calls you up. What's the process there, and what do you provide?
What I would say, if you want to see NASP come to a school near you, and we have a great little graphic on our website, and I'll share that with you. It's on the front page of the website. Basically, you need to talk to your school. This is a school-based organization. We're an in-school archery program. You're going to need to get the principal on board. You're going to need to get a willing teacher on board. NASP goes through the departments of Fish and Wildlife in all 49 states. Usually a coordinator or their designee will train that teacher. They'll train them in the safety of the 11 steps. They'll teach them how to get ready to teach this program. Next comes the equipment. An equipment kit comes complete for a school to begin instruction for about $3,200 or $3,300. What NASP does right off the bat is we give an equipment grant to every school who wants to begin the program, depending on how their state has it set up. Sometimes as much as half of that $3,200. So, you're raising $1,500. In 2003, when I was trying to raise my money, I went to Ducks Unlimited, National Wild Turkey, Rotary, Chamber, Quail Unlimited. I went to every conservation and community-friendly event. I had my money in a week. Here's what I'm saying. If you get a willing teacher and you get your principal on board, we're a 23-year-old program that's got an unblemished safety record. It involves boys and girls like nothing ever before. You, as a community member, if you find that willing teacher and willing principal, you've got half the grant money to make the program happen. What you're going to have a part of, if you support that school becoming a NASP school, is I'm telling you, you're going to make a difference in a child's life that you may never meet. We love to say that we're making a difference one arrow at a time. And we believe that. We believe that NASP takes the kid that's never seen it, never felt it, never experienced it. A few months later, they can't quit talking about it. 23.5 million kids say that something is going right. It's not me. It's not just our staff. It's all these people out in all these communities that have said or heard a podcast like this and said, I'm an outdoors person. I'm interested in conservation. How do I get NASP started? And they go and start talking to the principal. If you want to get on our website, which is naspschools.org, you can go over to the right-hand side and say, contact us. You'll get a drop-down menu that's got every state that's in our program. You can find the name, number, and beautiful photographic image of every one of our coordinators, and you can contact them. Hey, I'm Bill Smith, and I live so-and-so, and I'd like to see NASP get started. I'm going to go down to the school and talk to them. Can I give them your contact? Oh, yes. That's what they do. And then they're eligible for a grant from us. And the rest they say is replicated again and again and again all across our nation.
So Tommy, I have to ask, it's obviously from all the work y'all have done and the statistics you've got, it's got to be much easier now to get into a school than it was that first school that had to take the plunge. So I'm guessing just, showing that, it's the largest program in the country. It's got, tremendous success. Schools, the few that are left that aren't in it want to be in it. But I have to ask you brought it up twice now. I'm not going to ask you to out them by name, but 49 states are in the program.
Hey, we're working on Delaware right now. We got some great people in Delaware, and I love those guys. It's getting ready to happen, baby. I'm optimistic. They're great, and we get an email a week, every other week, from another foreign country wanting to do it. And you're right, John. It is easier, but today's schools have so many things already on them, and they've got to think about safety. They've got to think about gym and cafeteria time, all these things. But here's the thing that you already alluded to: we're 23 years deep into this thing. We've got people all over the place who have already done it in their communities. If somebody contacts you and you contact me, I will put them in contact with someone in their region or state who can help them get this thing started, that's already faced those hurdles of how to get it going.
If you, it sounds like it's easy to get started. I guess if you give us your website one more time and your social media, so folks, especially in Delaware, can
everywhere. We love the folks in Delaware. We love everybody, but you can find us at NASP Schools, all one word, naspschools.org. And we have a Facebook page. We operate multiple platforms. We've got one of the largest tournament platforms, nasptournaments.org. We have a database of all our instructors. You're looking at, since we started, almost 113,000 instructors have been trained. That's a few. You know what that really is, though? That's 112,485 role models. Because I don't have a dad, and I don't have a granddad, and my mom works 2 jobs. But my archery coach matters, and I don't want to disappoint her, and I don't want to disappoint him. So I want to get my grades up, and I want to stop getting in trouble. And then I discover, oh my goodness, there's a wild world out that window that I could go pursue. And the rest, they say, is, again, history.
Tommy, appreciate you coming on the show. You're a great friend, fantastic conservationist, mediocre turkey hunter, but other than that, we just appreciate everything you do for conservation and for, especially for the kids. Jim, it's good. Always good to see you. And to our listeners, please listen to this one and our other podcasts. Subscribe if you can. That always helps us, and you'll get notifications when new ones drop. And other than that, we'll see you in the woods or on the water.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.